they can come back, but I don't think there is anyone. So Ellie, whenever you're... Thank you. Right, we're back on. Okay, we're back on. The internet is glowing. Right. Right, so that takes us on to item 6, which is the EY Initial Audit Results Report for the year ended 31st March 2022. So did you want to introduce?
I'll just hand straight over to Maria and Larissa, who will take you through the initial results.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'm clearly going to assume that you've read the papers. Where we are with the audit is we are very close to completion of the audit. We've included in our papers an example of what the auditor's report will look like, the letter of representation that we're going to be requesting at the end of the audit, and a summary in those areas as complete of our findings at that point. What I think would be helpful is if Larissa just now takes you through the 3 items that are outstanding at the moment and how we're going to take the audit through to completion.
Thank you, Maria. So I'm going to list the items that we have in our report on page 47 of the agenda pack. So if you want to follow that through. And it's going to be a bit more than 3 items just because some of the procedures are generic procedures we complete at the end of the audit. The first top items are with respect to our audit procedures on specific accounts. So the first one is with regards to valuation testing we're doing for investment properties and property, plant and equipment. A large amount of work has already been completed, and this is an area that requires significant effort from both our teams and also the council. There are a few items still open to be clarified on that area. The next point is with regards to the accounting treatment of net gain or loss on disposal of investment property as it is described and presented in note 3 of the draft statement of accounts. We're still to come to a common agreement with the council on this accounting treatment, and we're currently working with them. On the third item, it relates to the valuation procedures we undertake for the audit of the defined pension liability. We are expecting to receive a letter from the auditor of Hampshire Pension Fund, and as of today we have not received that letter. We are aware that they engaged a specialist to help with the valuation of the pension fund's assets, and that has been the reason for the delay. We are expecting to receive it in the near term. The following item is with regards to a sample that we picked for specifically for the disclosures on future minimum lease rentals. This disclosure does not have a direct impact on the face of the accounts, on the balance sheet or the comprehensive income and expenditure statement. But it is a material disclosure in the accounts, and there were some minor differences in dates with regards to the basis for that disclosure. The following items are items that we normally complete closer to the finalization of the audit, such as going concern assessment and disclosures, the completion of our internal reviews for money value for money assessment. Just to know that the exercise we undertake for value for money is completed until the last day of the audit. When we sign off, we have to update our risk assessment until that day. The agreement of the final amendments to the financial statements need to be completed, and we need to update our subsequent events and receive the signed management representation letter. And that takes me to the end of this list. We thought this would be the most important for the committee in terms of our audit status. If you have any questions with regards to this list or any other items from the report, we're happy to take your questions.
Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Councillor Faulkner. Just a quick question about the material adjustment for the grant income on the COVID loans. Reading that, it appeared to me that we got some grant money from the government. We didn't distribute it all, and because we didn't distribute it all, we're allowed to take what we didn't distribute to the income statement. I think it was £490,000. Have I got that right or wrong in places?
So I'm assuming you're referring to the first adjustment, which were listed on page 49 of the report pack. This relates to, as you correctly noted, an unspent grant which was received in prior year, and the council recognised an accrued liability for the remaining amount that was not spent. However, we have not identified conditions that were not met that would trigger a liability for the same amount. Perhaps the accounting team would like to comment as well.
Do you want me to cover that?
As Larissa's explained, it was a difference of opinion on accounting treatment, so it's still the same underspend, if you like, against the grant, but we're not taking it to the income line, we're taking it to it'll go into a grant carry forward reserve at the end of the year, and it will be spent next year in line with the conditions that it was given us to us for. So it will still be spent on in terms of grants. It's just it was unspent, but obviously we've applied that in the current year.
Sorry, I thought you'd accrued it on the basis that you were going to pay it, might have to pay it back to government, which I thought would be the prudent and the correct accounting treatment. I'm not worried about what we do with it going forward is another discussion.
So what Larissa was explaining is that there's different accounting treatment. If there is no conditions to have to repay the grant, which in EY's opinion there was no conditions listed, that meant that we shouldn't accrue for it as a liability. We had to accrue for it in a different way. So from that point of view, that's what they've asked us to do, to adjust the accounts, to change the accounting treatment. But because there was no condition, we have to treat it in a different way. Had there been a liability to repay the money to government, we would have done it in the way that we had. We were of the impression that there was a condition, but no condition has been found.
Sorry, how do you accrue for something that's not a liability? All accruals are liabilities, aren't they, by definition?
So as I explained, at the year end, we put it into a carry forward reserve, carried it forward, and then obviously applied it in the new year.
Councillor Putty.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a small advice with regards to, I am a recipient of a small pension from Hampshire Pension Fund. Do I have to declare my interest?
I think your interest would be very small. Would you like to carry on, or are we into questions and points? Yeah. Okay.
I have a second question, although I still don't understand the answer to the first one. I had the last meeting we had here, we looked at the SIP for position statement on audit committees in local authorities and police, and we had some disagreement about what did and didn't apply. And I had a conversation with the audit partner on the telephone about a week later to understand what the scope of the governance review was as part of this audit. Because I know that one of the councillors here said that, I think the phrase was, we were already audited to death, and so wasn't interested. I think it's quite interesting, Maria's answer to me was quite interesting, that the scope of governance that is audited as part of the audit is perhaps not what you think it might be. So if I may, if Maria understands that question, if she could just cover it for us.
So from the point of view of our responsibilities under governance, they come under the value for money commentary, and it's one of the three aspects that we look at in the commentary. And what I explained was that within that we look at whether there's anything overall that's causing concern that's been brought to our attention. Then as such, we would then raise that as a risk as to whether procedures and processes were at risk of not delivering what they need to. And here we don't have anything that has flagged a concern, so there is no risk within our plan or indeed our report.
Okay,
Thank you. So just for everyone's clarity, that means no risk that's within the scope of, no risk to governance that's within the scope of the audit, but that means that nobody is looking at the risk of this council not adhering to SIPFA's statements and policy guidance that are outside the scope of the audit. And so I think this is something that this committee should be aware of, and I think it should come back and revisit as perhaps part of a review of a work programme. Can we add that to a work programme? Is that how it works, Councillor Faulkner?
no, you need to make that as a suggestion on the appropriate.
Is that a motion? Can we do a motion on it, or?
Can I ask
I'll
Sue,
second
Sue
it.
to respond?
I've got a second and a third.
I don't think we want to fill in a form. I think we've all fed up with forms, so we just like to. I'd like to second Councillor Basham's request.
So it's perfectly acceptable for the draft annual governance statement to come here for comment and noting. So we can have that into the work programme, no problem.
I'm not sure that's what we want or that's going to meet the requirement, but we can come back and pick this up later. I don't mind.
To answer that. So obviously, alongside that, you have the Chief Internal Auditor's assurances around our actual internal governance and our governance procedures.
That's fine, thanks, Sue. I think okay. Let's go into a bit more detail then. Good governance is a stool with three legs. Internal audit is one leg, and I think that we have a very good, strong leg on internal audit. External audit is a second leg, and again, I think we have a pretty good, strong leg on external audit. The third leg, and I think we don't always appreciate, or perhaps this committee is the third leg of governance, and it's this committee's responsibility to follow things like the SIPFA rules of guidance, to allow proper access to audit partners, to allow proper unfettered access to internal auditors, to perhaps co-opt 2 independent members, and perhaps to carry out a regular review of this committee's performance. I've been back through all of the minutes I could find for the last several years, and I've looked at the work programme going forward, and there is nothing on this work programme to review the work of this committee or its effectiveness. I think that's a significant control failure. I think it's a significant governance failure. I was disappointed that the auditors don't pick it up. I now understand why they don't pick it up, because it's not within scope of the value for money audit in the context of governance. I think it's a serious issue, and I would like it on the work programme.
That actually is not true, because Ernst EY 2 years ago we went through quite a training programme with the former chairman and the members of this committee to go through all that type of thing. But I accept the situation is now we've got several new members of the committee.
So I think it's just worth noting as well that previously we have brought back the terms of reference, if you like, for the audit committee. So I think perhaps that's something we need to reintroduce in terms of that review. What's the purpose of the committee, and what the expectation and outcome should be.
The terms and reference and the training issues are separate issues to a review of the performance and effectiveness of this committee. They're different things.
Councillor Tustang.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I was going to say, although I agree with what Councillor Basham says, that they are different things, but personally, I'm new, and I try and understand a lot of this stuff. But even looking at this, it's a 300-page document with a week to digest. I know a lot of it we've seen before, but sometimes you do feel like you're sort of, as a lay person, really underqualified to understand all this, and training would be really appreciated. And I do agree that I think we need to have a much more robust way of looking at this stuff, because it is very serious stuff, and make sure that we all have the right training in place.
And Councillor Faulkner, you made a reference to a training course that we had, and it was an outstanding one, and I attended it, and it was very comprehensive, and it was just before the Section 151 officer came. And in fact, I went and met with her shortly after she arrived, and made reference, funnily enough, to that training course. And she was in disagreement, funnily enough, interestingly, on what the terms of the course were. So I think it would be highly beneficial for us as a council to have a very detailed training course like that again, because there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect between how we used to operate as I used to be vice chair of this committee, and we had a fully qualified accountant who was the chairman, and we were allowed to request many more things than we seem to be allowed to request now, or information that we were allowed to go into which we do not appear to be allowed to get into now.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think it's appropriate to necessarily go into the full conversation, but I think I recall at the time the conversation was around some of the recommendations that were made were not necessarily appropriate for this authority. And what we then did do was actually bring back to the committee a fully updated set of rules of procedure, if you like, in terms of reference for the audit committee that was signed off by this committee. So it wasn't that I was in disagreement, it was the fact that we needed to apply it appropriately to this authority.
Okay, for the purposes of this meeting, where we are in the agenda item with EY, could we come back to that rather than discuss our own internal issues? Are there any other questions or comments for EY? No? In which case, it's noted and thank you.
When do you think you'll be finished? Sorry.
Right?
When do you think you'll finish the audit? That was just one final question.
So as soon as we've received the final bits of outstanding information, I know your team's working hard to get those through to us, we will book resource in and get the audit tied off.
When?
As I say, as soon as we receive the final bits of information that we're waiting for, which I know that your teams are working on.
No rough idea.
So the information requested will be returned this week, and therefore it's then entirely whether there's any follow-up questions from that information.
Councillor Cubitt?
Yes, I flagged this before with you guys, but I always say the same thing. I have huge concerns about our partnerships that we have, and the problems that we've had with partnerships that we've agreed extensive documentation on, and then they've ended up falling by the wayside. So one of them was New Rivers, and I've raised it with you before and asked whether that was within your value for money remit. And I also asked you about Muse and the concerns that I had with that partnership. That's also fallen out of bed now. So are those partnerships, and then the third one obviously is Many Down, are those three significant partnerships not considered by your value for money or your audit?
Thank you. So as I've explained before, from the point of view of the value for money, I do take a view across a number of things that the council does, and whereas there are some partnerships that maybe don't work as you expect them to, other partnerships will work incredibly well, and at this stage I don't have anything that has flagged a significant risk on my value for money conclusion or indeed commentary.
Right, thank you. Right, so on to item 7, which is the statement of accounts for the year ended 31st of March 2022. Now, if you recall, that's difficult, we did actually go through this and have a training course on it in September. So we've already, as it were, discussed an awful lot of the detail. But here is the statement of accounts, and as you see from the front sheet, there are three items for us to consider, which is one, the approval of the statement of accounts, authorising, as is usual, the chair of this committee to sign the statement of responsibilities, and in the event that there are any outstanding audit elements, that the committee delegates to the chair and to the Section 151 officer the authority to complete the statement. Okay.
I'm going to hand over to our Head of Finance, Adam Swain, but I think it's worth noting that anything that has changed from the previous version that was circulated some months ago, so hopefully people have had it more than a week, is highlighted in yellow in terms of the changes that we have agreed to make with the auditors. But I'm going to hand over to Adam, who's going to take you through them.
Thanks. So yeah, so as Sue highlighted in Appendix 1, which is the statement of accounts, the changes have been highlighted in yellow as we go through. And Appendix 2 sets out the schedule of the significant amendments and explains the detail of those. A couple of those were picked up in EY's report, one of which was the reversal of the COVID grant, which the amendments and adjustments are set out in Appendix 2. And then there's some other kind of minor changes to disclosures that were picked up through the audit, and some additional wording that's been added into some of the disclosures to expand on those that have come up as part of the discussions. I wasn't proposing to go through in detail those because I think they're set out, but I'm happy to take questions along with my colleague Sarah.
Councillor Basham.
Thanks, Adam. When are we going to be asked to approve these statements then?
So the recommendation set out on page 91 of the pack is for the committee to approve them tonight if appropriate, and to delegate to the committee chair if considered appropriate.
How is that possible when the audit's not complete?
Well, as EY have just explained, the outstanding items they don't consider to have any risk of material misstatement, and don't expect the accounts to change significantly from here.
So,
on the contrary, they identified lease adjustments which have a material disclosure which hasn't even been completed yet, I think is what they said. I just don't. I find it incredible that we're being asked to approve them when the audit's not complete.
So actually you're not being asked to approve them this evening. The recommendations are on the basis, had the audit been complete, you would have been asked to actually approve the actual statement of accounts. What it's saying is, in the event that there are any outstanding items, which we are being informed by EY that they don't expect that to have any material impact on the statement of accounts or to end in any requirements for us to change the accounts. And that's why it asks for, once they actually sign off the accounts, for the chair and myself to be able to sign those off. And what we have agreed in the past is that unless there's something material that comes to light, that's how it's actioned.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's appropriate. How do I vote against that?
well, at the end of our debate.
Great. Has anyone got any questions?
So, Councillor James.
If we were to not agree the way forward as outlined in bullet point 3, where we leave it to the 151 officer has a legal responsibility to do things the right way, and yourself, whom we trust, and what would the alternative be if we don't do it tonight? Just so I understand.
We will bring it back to committee again at some future point.
Where would the future point be, and when will we get in trouble for not submitting our accounts?
So there is we should have signed off the accounts by the end of November, but under the regulations that is a recommendation. What we have to do is republish our accounts with a statement to say whether the audit's completed or not, which we did do by the end of November as required. As I'm sure you're aware, nationally there are a number of audits that haven't even started yet, and there's an awful lot of the previous years, 2019, 20 that still haven't been signed off. So from our point of view, we're very lucky that the auditors prioritise our audit, and it's likely to be signed off in the next few weeks. Obviously, I believe the next audit is on the accounts committee is March. 30th of March. Yeah, so we'd have to bring it back in March.
It would make a massive difference if you were to say, very good, really pleased with the progress, we've had a good look at it, it's probably going to be nothing to change, and we come back on the 30th of March to pretty much rubber stamp it. That wouldn't be a drama.
No, you could hold off having the account signed until that point.
Well, if there's no more debate, Councillor Katecha.
What I would like is, once you've completed this, to have more time to go through this so we can ask more questions as well, because I don't think sometimes we get the opportunity to ask the key questions that might be very important. We're talking about public...
the point is we've been through the vast majority of this back in September, and also, of course, a lot of the issues within it appear at the quarterly updates at committee. So this completion of the accounts, it's not, shall we say, an unknown quantity. We've been through most of it before. But if there is no further debate on the statement of accounts, but you wish to go to a vote on whether to accept points 1, 2 and 3, we can do that. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Agreed, Chairman.
Yeah, okay, shall we? It's either yes or no.
So one is not relevant because the accounts the audit hasn't been finished. So they're recognising 2 and 3.
Okay. Did everyone hear that? We're actually voting on 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
And just to clarify that if it's rejected, then it comes back to committee on the 30th of March.
Sorry, Councillor Falconer, I think it's all three. I don't understand why we would be voting on a selection of them. This is a yes, no on all 3 points, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's an either-or scenario. So had the audit been finished and there's been a completed set of accounts, we were asking the committee to sign off the accounts. In the event that they're not completed, it's then asking the committee to delegate that to the chair and these. So on the basis that the accounts are not completed, recommendation 1 is therefore not valid.
Yeah.
I have a cunning plan. On that basis, let's keep 1, let's keep 2, and we'll just amend 3 to where it says, in the event there are outstanding audit elements to be completed at the date of the committee meeting, delete the rest of that and insert, this will be considered at the 30th of March committee meeting, if that's the date of it. Well, I just... If it's no, it comes back. Okay, well, I just thought I'd try.
Yeah, just to clarify, if it's no, it comes back to the next committee meeting.
Chairman, can you take it out on block, because there are all 3 there, and if we're going to amend it now, and we're going to be spending a lot of time, so
we do all 3 on a yes or no. So I'll put it to committee. All those in favour, yes. I'll put my hand on as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those no. So that's great. That saves me having to do the thing. Sue, yeah.
Ellie, can the committee make a decision on the 30th of March, given that they're in the pre-election period? Is it the 6th of March, is it? Oh, right,
It's
okay.
16th of April, I think, is PERDA.
No, it's 24th of March.
Is it? So, on to item 8, which is the capital investment strategy for 2023-24. Did I hear everyone say agreed? Well, just to clarify, that a lot of the items we've now got on the agenda are strategies and plans as opposed to our quarterly monitoring of actual activity. And to be frankly, most of these strategies and plans are basically very, very similar to what has gone before. So we've got item 8, the draft. Yes. Sue.
Okay, thank you. So obviously on the agenda this evening, you've got the capital investment strategy for 23-24 and a further item later on the treasury management strategy for 23-24. The capital investment strategy is made up of 2 elements, and that is made up of the capital investment strategy itself and also, capital investment strategy is an overarching capital programme strategy, treasury management strategy, investment strategy, non-treasury, and the property investment strategy. And on page 214 of the agenda, there's a little table at the bottom that explains how they all interlink. So the first agenda item covers effectively the capital investment strategy, which picks up the capital programme spend and the non-treasury investment strategy. In terms of the obviously, from a SIPFA point of view, we are required to follow the SIPFA's Prudential Code of Practice, together with investment guidance issued by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, DLUC. Obviously, we've mentioned this before, so you may recall that in 2021, we were given a revised Prudential Code of Practice, i.e. we refer to that as the Prudential Code, which was issued by SIPFA, and it replaced the previous code. The investment guidance we have is from what was previously the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and that was issued in 2018. And together these form the basis of how the Council is expected to manage and report its investment resources and its undertakings. So the Council has a requirement under the Prudential Code of Practice to have an annual capital investment strategy alongside prudential indicators and limits relating to capital expenditure, affordability, external debt and investments. The Council was also required by investment guidance issued by the previous MHCLG to have an annual investment strategy for non-treasury investments. So, and both of these strategies must be approved by full Council, and they will be coming to Council in February. This particular agenda item sets out, as I say, the capital investment strategy and the investment strategy for non-treasury. We will then come on to a second item, which is the Treasury Management Report. In terms of the capital investment strategy, the objectives are to provide a high-level overview of capital expenditure and what capital income and financing we have, alongside the types of investments that contribute to the provision of public services and how associated risks are managed and the implications for future financial stability. The strategy also sets out the framework and the limits within which officers will operate in the delivery of the strategy, and the indicators which allow members and the public to assess the level of risk being taken with capital and investment activities. So the capital investment strategy is set out as Appendix 1 to this report. And then the second element of this report is the investment strategy non-treasury. And the objectives of this strategy are to provide a high-level overview of the different types of non-treasury investment made by the Council and how these investments contribute to the provision of public services, alongside the associated risks, how they're managed and the implications for the future financial stability of the Council. The strategy also again sets out indicators that allow members and the public to assess the level of risk being undertaken in these activities. and the investment strategy non-treasury is set out in Appendix 2. So in terms of Appendix 1, this takes you through the proposed capital spend, and this aligns to the capital programme update report that will be going to council in February. So that is that will be debated and signed off hopefully by council in February. What it then does, it talks about whether if we were as an authority to look to borrow money, which at the current time there are no plans to do so, but we have to have a minimum revenue provision statement, and we also have to have a borrowing requirement and strategy noted in the report. So they are noted here for completeness, but at the current time there is no intention or thought process around borrowing by the council. And then what that then does is it goes into information actually in terms around the different types of treasury management investments that we're doing, and the knowledge and skills that the authority and officers are meant to have in place in order to be able to do this. Appendix 2, which is the investment strategy non-treasury, again talks about those items that are not pure treasury management activities. So for example, we have the obviously our direct property investment. We have the new current property investment strategy, and then we have service-based investments such as money down and service-based loans. These are then go on to further discuss these and the relevant indicators with further breakdown of the current investment property portfolio. The one thing that has been added this year, which is on a 3-year cycle, is the pension fund prepayment, where we have the opportunity to receive a discount for payment in advance, which gives us an improved return on otherwise external investments and helps to diversify the investment portfolio. So that was what I was just going to say on that particular item. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Councillor Tustale, I think, was first.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, this is a very simple question again. I think I'm having a simple questions day. Obviously, this is a strategy, and a strategy is obviously a way of looking at potentially working, but we have quite specific figures in here because we're looking at accounts type stuff. So we're going to go through and debate this within budget. So how does that fit in with the budget approval mechanisms? Because obviously if we approve it here, are we then kind of like saying, yep, we're happy with that, or will it be something that will be debated and then could potentially change through the budget debate?
So you're not being asked to approve these, you're asking to note them and forward any comments that will be included in the papers that go to council. Only council can approve these strategies.
Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah. No, I put my hand up ages ago. I was wondering two things. I've said this to you before, Sue. When strategies come forward like this, it's much easier, certainly from my background historically, to have what the original strategy was and what the changes are. So I wonder whether you could just detail the kind of main headline differences that you've amended to the strategy from before the first time. Secondly, I want to request of the chairman that we go into private session, please, because I have a very specific question that I want to ask, but it probably has commercial sensitivity, so I would like it to go into private session, please.
So in terms of what's changed, in the main, obviously it will be the years of change from 22-23 to 23-24, and in terms of the numbers in the report, obviously they've all been updated for the latest capital programme. The main change is the addition of the pension note to say that we will be pre-investing in the pension fund. That's the only changes that predominantly have been applied.
Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Chair. Are we going to handle Councillor Cubitt's private question afterwards?
Yes.
Thank you. Sue, the pension prepayment discount thing, obviously sounds like a good use of cash to pay a commitment that we've got to pay over 3 years anyway. Is there a did we calculate a sort of rate of return for that or anything, or is it just did it just pass the sniff test? I guess it's.
I'd like to think we're slightly more professional than a sniff test. So we will confirm to HCC that we wish to do the prepayment. They will then give us the specific numbers. Last time round, it gave us a discount of in excess of 10%, and the council circa £700,000 over the 3-year period that we would have otherwise not made if we hadn't have made the prepayment, and we would not have generated that in terms of alternative investments. And one of the reasons why we're very keen to do it again is because actually this has helped us to put our pension liabilities, so our element of the pension fund, is now in surplus by 7% because we're also linked to those ongoing investments.
So you get advanced investment as well.
So what we get is obviously we pay less than we have otherwise done on an annual basis across those 3 years, which generates us obviously an instant income return. And then in terms of our share of the overall pension pot, because of our investment, in terms of that is all that money is invested early, which means that those investments, if you like, accelerate in value, and obviously our share of that is bigger because of our investment.
So it benefits the council and the employees as well, the members of the scheme. Great, thank you.
Okay, do you need to go through this in order to... The first sentence. Oh, thank you. The first sentence, to agree with members at the meeting, is now to become confidential. Is that